Well, hello there. This is Charles the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. I'm really pleased to show you this game. I think I played really well. But more than that, on analysis, I discovered that I'd stumbled onto a new line. So this is the Magnus Sicilian. So a Sicilian line that former world champ Magnus Carlsen, possibly the GOAT, the greatest of all time, it's a line that he's played at least 3 times at a high competitive level. Let's go take a look. Now, I've got the white pieces in this game, and in this game, my opponent, just like in my last video, opted to play the Piet's defense. So e4 and e6. And because I had reasonably good results with knight c3 rather than a d4, in this game I decided to play that again. And the interesting thing here is that for the Piet's player, and my opponent was a Piet's player, they will almost always expect to see d4 or knight f3. This occurs, according to the Lead Chess Community database, about 8% of the time. When I looked at my opponent's games on opening tree, they played the Piet's with the black pieces a bit over, I think, 1,000 times. They'd only seen knight to c3 about 40 times, so 4%, which means that generally they're not going to play it very accurately. Well, this move is completely okay for white. Now, in this game, black immediately surprised me by transposing this into a Sicilian with c5. Effectively, this has now become like a closed Sicilian. Now, the thing with Sicilians is that typically I've now been playing the Smith-Morra Gambit, but this is no longer available for me because I'd already developed the Queen's Knight. So here I had to think. In the past I used to play the Grand Prix attack, which would be f4 in this setting. But as I was looking at this position, not for very long, this was a very quick thought, I was thinking, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with d4. Seems to meet basic opening principles. If you can take the full center with pawns, you probably should. So I decided to actually do that. I decided to play d4, and this is the Magnus Sicilian. Or to put it in other terms, Magnus would play white in this setting. This is kind of a way of playing an anti-Sicilian. Now, if you look at my blog article in the description, I've written a little bit about this, and I've also linked to 3 games that Magnus has played using this opening. He won twice and drew once. So it's potentially a pretty good opening. And when I had looked at the Lead Chess Community database, at the beginning, when an opponent plays the Sicilian, black and white are completely equal, 48% win rate each, which is why the Sicilian is such a good opening for black. However, with the Magnus Sicilian, with d4, white is winning. So white captures a winning advantage. And even more interesting is that if you limit the database to higher rated players, white does even better, up to like a 55% win ratio, which is really amazing against the Sicilian. Now, the idea here is for white is that black captures, queen captures. Looks like that's a problem because black gets to develop their knight, winning tempo. However, you bring the queen back to d2, and here black has a number of options. So either maybe e6 or g6, or to develop the knight. Let's say develop the knight. You can see those other moves are good as well. What we now do with white is the goal is that we're going to fianchetto that queen's bishop and then long castle. And this setup is potentially quite good. The opening has the center has been opened somewhat, and the game doesn't proceed down sort of typical Sicilian-ish lines, which of course takes a Sicilian player potentially out of their comfort zone. So that's the logic to the Magnus Sicilian, or no, the anti-Sicilian. However, in this game, black didn't feel comfortable taking, and so instead what they did was they opted to bolster that pawn with b6, and that is immediately a mistake. Now, when I saw this move, I did have a sense of dissonance. I had an intuition that black had made a mistake. It didn't crystallize immediately in my mind what that mistake was. And so rather than, really deeply calculating it, it really is at the beginning of the game, I didn't want to lose too much time. I just simply, again, played according to opening principles, develop the pawns in the center, knights before bishops if you can. So I just developed my other knight. Now, as you can see, it didn't spend very much time, but as I sort of looked at this position more, you can see Stockfish says I should have captured. What I did realize, what did crystallize in my mind, was that black has significantly weakened the light squares on the queen side. And so here, what I wanted to do was to take advantage of those weakened light squares. And what I saw was a bit of a complicated maneuver, bishop here and then here with a attack on their rook. Now black plays this move, and that's what I start to do. You can see Stockfish says once again that taking this way is best. Why is that? Well, I didn't need to do this complicated maneuver. The simple thing is to take, and then potentially we have the queen to d5 with the attack very directly, and we also open up the center. So that is better. Now, I didn't see that in the game, and instead I played this maneuver here. They wanted to trade bishops. No reason why I should. Now bishop to that d5 square with an attack on the rook, and basically that rook is lost, and you can see white now has an advantage. Now, in this position, black tried to defend by doing some aggressive counterattack on some of my pieces. So firstly, they took this way. You can see that's a mistake, attack on the knight. That doesn't work because now I take with the queen, and we now have the semi-open d-file. Black now thrusts their e-pawn forward to e5 with an attack on the queen. And here I had a sense that there was a tactic, and I actually spent about 2 minutes calculating this position. Have a look. Can you see what is the best move for white? Any thoughts? So obviously there is an attack on the queen, but I had a strong sense I shouldn't be retreating the queen. And I, in this position, saw a tactic that's in my book, 50+2, Chess Quick Wins, on page 24, which is that we can potentially deflect black's king from the defense of his queen. Now, at the moment, the black still has the d-pawn on d6, meaning that the file is semi-opened. But what if I take that pawn with the knight? Firstly, looks like there's these two attackers, very strong, on the f7 square, the f7 pawn. Most likely, they're going to capture this way, and if they do that, the file is basically fully open. Bishop here with check. Now the king has to respond, so let's see what happens. Knight captured. It's a brilliant move. Quite proud of that move. They capture. Very, very natural looking. And now bishop with check. The idea is to deflect the king so that I can take the queen. Queens now look at each other. Now you might ask, well, what if the king refuses to capture the bishop? Now the king can't go onto the d-file, so it has only one other legal move, which is to go to e7 to bomb cloud. But in this position, I now have the dark square bishop with a skewer of the king against the queen. And in fact, in this position, black pretty much just has to take this way. They can block, but that doesn't make any sense because they just end up losing the knight as well. And effectively, I still win the queen. Now, in this position, black did in fact take my bishop, and on move 10, I win their queen. Very, very satisfying. And I was just really, really chuffed to have gotten that attack. Now, in this position, I actually kind of expected my opponent with the black pieces to resign. But they were a good sport and they decided to play on. And with them playing on, we actually need to be quite careful. I knew that I had to be quite careful in this position. Simply, my queen is surrounded by black's pieces, which means there is a risk of the queen getting trapped. So in this position, again, I did think for quite a while. I was wondering, should I just bring my, pull my queen all the way back into my territory, maybe to D2, maybe even back to D1. But as I thought about it, I thought, look, actually the queen is safe at the moment. And the queen on their back rank is actually in a reasonably good place. The reason for that is it pins their knight to their rook, and it pins, again, one of their pieces to their other rook on the back rank. So that queen is actually in a pretty good place. So instead, what we need to do is to recognize that a queen by herself cannot give checkmate. And with so many pieces, it would be difficult to take pieces because they'll be defending each other. So we need to bring additional pieces into the attack. And that's what I did. So firstly, dark square bishop all the way to G5. So that was after they developed their knight. That makes sense. But these two pieces are effectively pinned. So the queen has kind of an outsized influence. So here, the bishop attacking there as well. Now black decided to move their rook this way. They probably saw captures, putting pressure effectively on the pinned piece. That's fine. I bring another attacker onto their knight. And in this position, they decide to attack. That doesn't really work because I can now just take, because they've only got one defender there. So takes, they try to give an attack, but that's potentially all right because queen here with check, king now actually moves to the wrong place. However, in this position, I was actually feeling a little bit tired. And, I think for me, I probably need to do some more checkmate puzzles. There is a mate in one here, which is queen captures the rook. Defended, and that's mate because everything is covered. I didn't see that, unfortunately, and so I decided to capture this way. There we go, with another check. The king here with a check, king here. In this position, once again, I miss another very, very quick mate. So there's a mate in 2, which is queen here, check. Can't escape here because it's defended, has to block, and that would be mate. Now, I didn't see that either. Instead, in this position, I decided to play the knight with the attack. Here, I now capture the rook, and with each loss of material, I think black suffered a little bit more emotional damage, and in this position, they opted to resign. Good game, GG. The big takeaway from this game is to always be on the lookout for potential tactical patterns that might support a big attack, especially when your opponent treads off the beaten path. Also, consider giving the Magnus Sicilian a go. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.